allow me that. More now in the homeowners insurance coverage crisis in California. Tens of thousands of people have been dropped by their insurance companies due to the ongoing threat of wildfires. If the California Department of Insurance has its way, new regulations will go into effect in January that Commissioner Ricardo Lara says will bring insurers like Allstate and State Farm back to California. The regulations will require companies to increase their coverage in high fire risk areas by as much as 85%. But Consumer Watchdog says the reforms are only going to lead to higher insurance premiums. The president of Consumer Watchdog, Jamie Court, he's here with me in studio tonight. Thanks so much for being here. So it sounds good. I've read a lot of the regulations, tried to make sense of them myself. 85%, up to 85% coverage for companies like Allstate and State Farm to increase their coverage in these distressed areas. That sounds great, but you say, no, it's only going to lead to higher premiums. Why aren't you on board with this?
Well, because first of all, it is going to lead to higher premiums. The deal was, the commissioner said, we will allow them to raise their rates and raise their rates substantially for people all across the state, not just people in high-risk wildfire areas, for everybody. Everybody's going to pay more. And in exchange, these companies are going to have to insure people up to 85%, or actually at 85% in high-risk wildfire areas. But the regulation says they only have to increase their coverage by 5%. So if you have 0%, you can go up to 5%, and then you can charge everybody in the state more. So it was a huge loophole. And also, the policies that they have to sell are not necessarily high-quality homeowners policies. They're like the Fair Plan policies, which are the default policy. So the problem is the plan has lots of loopholes, and we're all going to be paying higher rates based on these climate models. They'll be allowed to use these climate models, which are basically algorithms, and we can't see what those algorithms are and even challenge them. So unfortunately, that dooms everybody in California to higher rates, and we won't even know that people in these high-risk wildfire areas are going to be guaranteed coverage. It's going to be up to the company's good graces if they want to insure them.
So Allstate increased in August, increased their rates overall by about 34%. This is something that Consumer Watchdog did sign off on, by the way. You talk about the difference, the huge discrepancy between the 85% and the 5% coverage. Ricardo Lara, the commissioner, he was questioned about this in an interview with Cal Matters last week. Here's what he had to say about that 5%. Let's go ahead and listen.
The 5% is really for those small to medium-sized companies that will never get to an 85%. But we still need them to actually write in these communities.
Okay, so Lara says 85% would be for the large companies. The 5% would be for the small to medium companies. How would they oversee this? How would they enforce this? I spoke to the spokesperson for the California Insurance Commission. He says this: if companies fail to meet the new requirements under existing law, the department can do a market conduct exam and audit insurance companies, conduct rate hearings, which can lead to a rate adjustment or refunds, or prevent insurance companies from using wildfire catastrophe models altogether. Your response?
That's just BS. I mean, if the regulation says you only have to increase coverage by 5% to get the rate hike, you only have to increase coverage by 5% to get the rate hike. Plus, there was a case which we lost against State Farm where the insurance commissioner is not allowed to issue refunds. If a rate goes into effect, he can't go back and call for refunds. So that's just BS to cover up the fact that he didn't live up to his promise. He told everyone, we're going to get people 85% coverage. He's only getting people 5% more coverage. And this is just, unfortunately, the start of what we have as a deregulation plan that are going to increase rates more if the legislature doesn't get involved. And that's what we're urging the legislature to do, is to get involved.
This is an industry that has not been reformed in decades. And obviously something needs to change, given that companies have said, you know what, we're going to drop up to 100,000 policies.
Well, that's what they're doing, is holding people hostage. But our rates have been low. Our rates have been an average of $2,000 a year. Florida, where they're using these reforms the commissioner wants, has rates that are more than double ours. They're $4,200. So it's worked for 30 years.
So you think that no reform is necessary?
No, I think there is reform that is necessary. I think the reform has to be that the legislature says that if you fireproof your home, if you spend tens of thousands of dollars to get your home up to a fireproofing standard to withstand fire, that you should be guaranteed a policy. We've signed off on rate hikes like the Allstate rate hike. They are getting their rate hikes, but they're not giving us their coverage. They want more and more. We can't afford to give them more and more.
and the catastrophe modeling that this new, these regulations would now be under, don't they take into account mitigation efforts by homeowners?
No, they take into account whatever the black box model says. So they'll take into account high-risk fire areas, and but we won't be able to see what their calculations are because they're not public. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement to see this, and you can't talk about it publicly. So they will come up with a black box model and says, we're going to charge people more in this area because they're high-risk wildfire people. We'll charge people less. They're not high-risk wildfire. We won't be able to challenge those assumptions. But the point is, currently, they can only raise rates based on whether they have past claims. Now they're going to be able to charge them on intangible factors, and it's going to be very expensive. We know this is what they've done in Florida, and we know the rates in Florida are more than double here. So it is not a good solution. But if they had a public model that we could see, we would be okay with it. If we could have a public model where we could see those algorithms, we'd be okay with it.
It's a complex issue.
It is a very complex issue.
Okay, the president of Consumer Watchdog, Jamie Court, thanks for being here tonight. All right, Alex, over to you.